just to recap, real quick, the one thing that doesn't seem to get mentioned much in relation to these old cars, and I've been restoring old cars in one form or fashion since I was a teenager. And the one thing that always comes back to haunt me at any given point are connections. And even when I got into the transmission building business, I noticed back in the early 90s, actually even late 80s, Dodge had to put out reports to us mechanics to check grounds, especially in the old Voyagers and the 12-valve Cummins, to ground the ECM to the block on another ground and just ground the crap out of it, check all grounds. They were always having an issue with that and creating all sorts of drivability problems. And not unlike I was a big Mopar guy, all my old Mopars, there's always some connection problem. And as you'll see in this video, it was the same damn thing, completely throws you off as to eluding you to the real problem, thinking it could be the box, thinking it could be your ignition switch, and what it really ends up being is bad, dirty connections. And when time goes by over many years with these old cars, you're going to find that they look good and they're not, and they've got a surface layer that just has long since no longer making a good solid connection. Some of you know when you have an old battery that you clean and cut the connectors and then you rip the coating off down the wire and you'll find white crap all the way infested all the way in your main connection wires to your battery. Same kind of thing happens in a number of higher voltage connections, which we're talking about here. The main lead going to your glow plug box. These take a lot of load. That's why we carry these big batteries. So I just want to mention that it's not always, you can definitely get some weird readings and you can definitely get thrown off. And the first rule of thumb on old anything is check all your connections, especially under against the firewall, anything up against under your fender wells where water gets to. It's a really good place to start. And if you're restoring anything, that's a good thing to take care of right away to avoid any issues. You can have them under the dash as well, but at the end of the day, that's what we found on this vehicle, as you'll see, that one, as you'll see, and it solved the problem. And actually, ironically, this thing wasn't even getting an alternator charge, even though I'd check it and it looked like it was getting at least 12.8 volts, which I know should be higher, but the battery just was in high charge, and sometimes they get 13, thinking, oh, the alternator's charging the battery. Well, at the end of the day, it wasn't getting any charge, and because these have no ignition system, unless you're running a lot of other auxiliary items like your AC or your radio or lights, of course, will definitely take them down. Well, she never did. She drove all over town with no problem, and then it would get low and have problems starting, and then we'd jump the battery and it'd run around for quite a while. And I was thinking the alternator was getting bad and it just wasn't putting out enough voltage. Again, at the end of the day, all it was the stupid connection at the bulkhead, as you'll see how we went through the process, and now it's working absolutely perfect, absolutely the way it should, and that's it. So I just want to throw that in because it's something that eludes us and is a very necessary thing, that connections are good and solid and clean. And that's it. Enjoy the video. The lock going. We don't get a glow plug light. And we'll turn the car over, but no light. So that's what we're going to try to figure out today. So a little weird problem with this. No, everybody's experienced the turn on the key, no glow plug light. It's talked about. Usually the relay box here is the culprit, but we've swapped out the box from my 240, and does the same thing. No glow plug light, no start. So we're going to go through a little diagnostic process that everyone should follow, and I don't see it really talked about a lot, so I'm going to do a little bit more about it. In terms of diagnostic, anything is always about isolate and remove, or remove and isolate basically. Remove as much from the system as you can and introduce one thing in as at a time as you can to hopefully pinpoint a problem. So what we're going to do is, it's actually my box in here now, we're going to take her box, put it on my car, check the box on that. First, it's short and simple. We'll try it on the Blue 240. If it works, then we know it's not the box. Then we're going to isolate the glow plug, the ignition, and we're going to isolate the temperature sensor in the 4-prong piece, and we're going to jump the box and make sure all the glow plugs go on. Taking out the ignition is part of the process and the temperature sensor. We'll ground the wire that sets off the relay, and we'll see if the glow plugs fire. Supposedly the dash light may go on for that. I'm not sure, but I don't think so, since we don't have this connected. But that's what we're going to plan on doing. Make sure I went through the process here one more time. So my box from my car is in her car, which I know works, and it's not working. So we're going to isolate. We're going to take the ignition switch out of the picture. We're going to take this thermostat out of the picture, and I believe there's one more wire on here that we're going to take out of the picture. There's 3 wires, yeah. And we are going to go one by one and figure out what the deal is. We know we have hot wire. We got 12 volts, 12.5 off my battery. So we're just going to try to eliminate and isolate, right? So that's the process. So we're going to go take her box, put it on my car. Probably will work, but we'll find out and eliminate that particular potential problem. So now, first thing to do is put her hot wire on. This is mine. This is off my 240. Of course, we have military base, Kirtland. 6 Ospreys going by. Alright, so the box is connected. See what happens on my car. Well, that was a hard start. It's cold, but the box works, and that's what we're trying to determine. So now what we're going to do is she's going to turn the key. We're going to go to 12 volts on the meter, and we're going to see we got hot wire right here. Let me double check how we can set them. There we go. So that's staying in position there. Hang on a sec, sweetie. So we got hot wire there. Your key is off, correct? Yeah. Okay. Okay, turn the key on. to the on position. Okay, off. Okay, on. So that one, it's just going to be that one there. All right, turn it off. Gotta get a jumper wire. Okay. So what we're doing, what we figured out is that when she turns on the ignition, and we're checking just the red wire, nothing else is plugged into the box. As you can see, we got 12.3 volts. When she turns the ignition on, go ahead. It drops to, look at that, 1.88. That's a huge draw, and there's nothing on this box. Go ahead and turn the key back off, and it jumps back up to basically 12 volts.
Have you tested just the wire without it being connected to the box?
Yeah, let's do that. So now we're going to test just the wire, not connected to the box, and let's go from there. But we know the box works because we put it on the blue car, on the 240, so we assume there's nothing wrong with the box. So let's not put any load on this wire from this end and see if we get a drop in voltage on just the wire. Since we know that's a problem now, here's the box, and let's see where we're at with that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it and use the same ground. So right now, there we go, 12 volts. Go ahead and turn the key on. There it is, it's dropping. So we have something on the other end of this wire that's pulling a draw of damn near all the voltage. Turn it off. And the wire doesn't get warm, so it's just a load of some sort. So we got to figure out where that other end of this wire is and see what it's connected to, which according to the diagram is a bulkhead, which we haven't quite figured that out yet. So that's a big deal. So we've eliminated the ignition, the temperature sensor switch, and I forget what the other wire was on here. But that's all out of the picture. And the wire is not touched to anything on this end, so we'll figure out what's going on there. So what I ended up doing to get this car started was jumping a straight wire from the battery to the hot wire on the starter relay, and I took that wire that was dropping to zero when we turned the ignition on, and took that off and just ran this wire. Started the car, glow plug light went on and everything. Then we come to find this. We knew there was, I checked the alternator, is actually how we found this. This was closed, so it looked fine. And the alternator was putting 14.8 volts out at the wire, and this was only at 11 volts. That's why we have the battery charger on it. So it was not getting a charge from the alternator. And if you look at these leads, that's in focus, they are pretty nasty. This box had gotten very hot, and it obviously took out the little partition between the two. And we're going to clean all these leads up. Gives me a chance to clean underneath that, and you can see how hot it got. I am suspecting, and we can only suspect at this point, but we know that this is seized. This is the water pump that we now made a straight line elbow from. You can get that anywhere at a hardware store. It's 1/2 inch, and we feel like this took such a draw. We found a burnt fuse in the, what's it called, in that relay? Over,
EEG, it's an over voltage protective relay.
okay, over voltage protective relay. It's in the kick panel and it has a 10 amp fuse. Apparently it's a little more common on newer cars and not so much on these, but we think that water pump is what caused it, but we don't know because we can't test that. But we do know that a seized electrical pump will create a load. We know that for a fact. Was this the source? Possibly, and it's more than likely, but we don't know until you know. So anyway, what's that?
I'm trying to see what one not
Oh.
burned was supposed to look like.
So the worst thing is these leads are horribly dirty, and I suspect that they are probably making a horrible connection, and it may be why our battery's not even being charged. There's a fuse in here, I believe, and we're going to check that out here in a little while. But in the meantime, I'm going to clean all this up, getting rid of that. I have an aftermarket one I got from Yearwoods that I'm going to use to make the connection on this plate, and get it all back with a good, solid, clean connection, and we'll clean these leads up and make them nice and make a good contact. All right, quick recap. We'll go from there. Is we ended up using an aftermarket block. I looped these three, and the light goes on nice now. I'll do that with a GoPro. Light goes on nice now. Made it all connected, nice and strong, and that made a huge difference. The glow plugs are probably getting the best voltage they have. When we started up before, they used to choke and gag a little before the engine would warm up, and now it starts up rather nicely, and the battery has never been getting voltage from the alternator. That's the bad part. It was never getting voltage from the alternator due to those bad connections, and now it is. And now when I test the battery, I'm getting 13.5 volts, and so now our battery is finally being charged correctly. And it would drive, and we were driving with just a charged up battery, and I'd come out and I'd charge it, and it would show some charge, but now it's getting actually good charge. As you can see, I showed it in another part, but this is actually pretty horrid. It was pretty horrid, and now you can see how but the connections themselves were so corroded. They were awful. I took my Dremel tool and cleaned up the old connections. As you can see, they're very clean, and battery's getting a good charge now, which is superb, and it's running great. All right, so the other thing we get now, a nice strong light. As you saw before, it was pretty weak. And the other nice thing, nice quick start, less choking and gagging, and it's been running a lot better already. So we're still working on our climate control, and it's just running so much nicer now. Nice idle. We don't have a tack yet. We're going to work on that. See why that's not working, but we'll get there. Also been trying to clean this bay up a bit. We did the